There's a phrase called a blackballed, and it deals with if I were to be given two stones and or two different marbles, and one was a black marble and one was a white marble, then I would be able to go ahead and put the black ball or the white ball into a box or into a bag or into whatever in order to show my approval or disapproval of somebody. And so if there was a piece of jewelry and that was given to three, that three people got together in order to give to somebody else, and the piece of jewelry had 3 black pearls and diamonds, then would that be kind of like the equivalent of saying somebody's been blackballed forever? Or would that be kind of like saying somebody would be the black sheep? Which also gets back to some dealing with the nursery rhymes. Black sheep, have you any wool? My point being is that sometimes, just like when there's different types of people, that sometimes a psychopath even indicates what a psychopath is going to do, premeditatedly do, before a psychopath does something. Which brings up another point, is that people think that psychopaths are murderers. That's not necessarily the reality of a psychopath. That what it is a psychopath knows how to knows how to break the law without being caught, and also knows how to go right up to the law without being caught. It doesn't mean that psychopaths are not destroy people's lives. But my point is that sometimes the movies and the media are used to make people feel safe when and the movies and the media tends to skew things or manipulate things. Another example is that was when that the media called I think he was a chemist or something. He had some kind of science background. I remember, but anyhow, it was based. The whole movie was based on a sequence of real events that had happened. But anyhow, the guy had was guilty of some very heinous things, and what it is a woman ended up busting him, and when she ended up busting him, and he was prosecuted, the woman underestimated how far, how many steps ahead she was, and she thought that she was ahead of him, and I want to bring that up. So, some people think that that just like that, the media called that guy the Mensa murderer. That just because there is a Mensa murderer who was prosecuted does not mean that every single criminal who should be locked up and behind bars in prison is locked up and behind bars in prison. And just like there are some people that are called scientists that do things for good reasons, does not mean that every single scientist is doing things for good reasons. Which also deals with when certain information is skewed, that then basically that would be like if I were to take petroleum oil and put it in my eyeglasses and try to look out my eyeglasses and try to see everything with some sort of visual accuracy. And that when things are skewed, that's called manipulated. And the word manipulated also deals in with different personality disorders. So if a psychopath who is extremely wicked, who had no ability to show emotions, intended to destroy as many lives as the psychopath could, what would typically be on a psychopath's face? When a psychopath would walk up to talk to people. Would a psychopath have warning signs all over a psychopath in order to go, and alarms going beep, 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 psychopath, psychopath, psychopath? Would some sort of brain imaging or brain scan be necessary in order to determine a psychopath, or could people just look at the amount of destruction that a psychopath has done? And the reason why I talk about that is there's oh let me add something else. If there was a psychopath who was up to no good and who possibly or probably what was a serial killer or whatever else, would a psychopath like it when people were like, oh crap, that's a psychopath? Would people want to go up to a psychopath, or would people kind of like walk away and minimize any kind of contact with a psychopath or a narcissist or a sociopath? Now, once a psychopath had been busted for being a psychopath, what would the psychopath most likely do? Try to like smooth things over and just act like nothing had happened. Would a man or a woman who is not a psychopath, sociopath, narcissist want to spend more time with a psychopath, sociopath, or a narcissist, or prefer to be as far away from a and to do no contact, or at least minimize contact with a psychopath, a sociopath, or a narcissist? What would be the probability that there are psychopaths that are tied to the Department of Education, especially when there's experiments at Alfred Kinsey, who was a serial rapist, and there was the Millman experiments and that kind of stuff. Just think about that. So when a scientific experiment, an experiment would typically start with a hypothesis. A scientific experiment would start out with something that's called a hypothesis. And typically, scientific experimentation is done on people. I'm going to give one example. It was with the experiment dealing with syphilis. Which brings up to, well, the syphilis experiment dealt with people being free to choose if they wanted to be experimented on with syphilis, or if they wanted to go to war and have their lives destroyed that way. That'd be the equivalent, like if I held up a grizzly bear or a polar bear and pick between door number 1 or pick between door number 2. Just had a big smile on my face, like, it's really good. And what if I put on a white lab coat and made myself look like a medical doctor? And just smiled real big and had an empty look on my face, like, I'm not doing anything wrong. I bring up that because there was an experiment that was done that it indicated that people would blindly accept whatever the scientist did, who had a white coat on.